Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, Vice President J.D. Vance visits National Guard troops deployed in D.C. He says the nation's capital has seen a 35% reduction in violent crime since President Trump took federal control over the city's police force 9 days ago. Plus, the U.S. Marshal Service announcing it's offering $500 rewards for tips leading to arrests in D.C. Jason Blair reports. Hurricane Erin has strengthened into a Category 2 storm, tracking just off the U.S. East Coast. Officials warn North Carolina residents to prepare for strong winds, coastal flooding, and dangerous rip currents. Christina Corona brings us the weather update. Israeli forces begin the first phase of their plan to take over Gaza City. Meanwhile, Israel approves plans for a new Israeli settlement in the West Bank. Jason Perry has the details. President Trump now saying Presidents Putin and Zelenskyy will meet without him, but he'll step back in if needed. The White House also confirming a trilateral summit could follow. Mariotsu with the latest. And as the U.S. works toward peace in Europe, fighting in Ukraine continues. A Russian drone reportedly crossed Ukraine's western border and exploded in NATO member Poland. Erin has Poland is responding.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. Vice President J.D. Vance visits National Guard troops in Washington, D.C., while the city enters its 9th day of federal control of law enforcement. The U.S. Marshal Service is now offering $500 rewards for tips leading to arrests in the city. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
We don't have to live like this. We do not have to allow our cities to be taken over by violence and disorder and by chaos.
Vice President J.D. Vance, along with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, went to Union Station in Washington, D.C. to visit some of the hundreds of National Guard troops deployed in D.C. for the current crackdown on crime.
We've seen a 35% reduction in violent crime. We've seen over a 50% reduction in robberies. We are seeing really substantial effects. So I want to come here, highlight what they're doing, say thank you in person.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says that as of Wednesday morning, 550 arrests have been made in Washington, D.C. since August 12th, when the federalization of law enforcement began in the city. U.S. Marshals Service put out a notice for $500 rewards for information leading to arrests in D.C. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said in Tuesday's press briefing that a large amount of arrests that have been made since the D.C. crime sweep began have been in the two most dangerous areas of the city.
Nearly half of all the non-illegal alien-related arrests have occurred in wards 7 and 8 in the District of Columbia, where we know, there's the highest rate of crime.
There are also unconfirmed reports that the Department of Justice is investigating alleged manipulation of D.C.'s crime stats. President Trump did say last week that his administration is looking into it.
They are under investigation right now. They are giving us phony crime stats, just like they gave other stats in the financial world. D.C.
Police Union Chairman Greg Pemberton told Fox News that pressure to omit crime data is one of the main complaints the union gets from their members.
They respond to the scenes of these violent crimes, and inevitably you'll have a captain or a commander or sometimes a lieutenant show up on the scene and advise them to take a report for a lesser offense.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
And just a little more than a week into the federal takeover of D.C. police, the Trump administration unveils data showing a large number of arrests happening in high-crime neighborhoods. What do residents in those areas make of the crackdown? NTD's Sam Wong was out in D.C.'s Anacostia neighborhood to hear from the people.
You feel safe being out here?
Oh, absolutely. You know, other than the presence of the law enforcement, everything is, as it always has been.
There has not been any altercations as it was in the past.
We hear shooting almost every other night, sometimes every week. Sometimes. When I say shooting, I mean they shooting hard. Broad daylight, sometimes at nighttime mostly, but you do hear it in the daytime though.
Have you noticed an increase of law enforcement presence around here?
Yes, sir. I have noticed a lot. It's a more increase, but it's a shame that it takes Donald Trump to bring all these people in for all the police to come outside and do their jobs, actually.
This is my actually my first experience with the law enforcement. You know, man, it's cool. That doesn't bother me, them being around here, you know. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, guess what? Hey, they're doing the right thing.
What are your thoughts on President Trump's decision to send in the National Guards and federalize the D.C. police force?
I felt as though he should have met with the constituents first, the elected official first, to hear exactly what is needed to make the nation's capital safe. However, it does send a signal to anyone who is thinking about going back to the day of altercations and aggravating the citizens of the District of Columbia, the nation's capital.
Do you think this area in general calls for some level of police patrolling here?
Yes, I really do. I do believe that, but as far as the excessiveness of it, I don't agree with that at all. I think it's effective. I mean, as I was following the news and noticed that they had making more arrests and obtaining more guns, which is a good thing.
Do you feel safe as of now, knowing that there's like FBI agents and law enforcement here around the metro?
Yeah, they should have been done that a long time ago. Especially we got the military involved as well. You know, you can really handle business, man. Because military ain't gonna play with you.
President Trump is calling on Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook to resign over allegations of mortgage fraud. The allegations were made on X by the director of the U.S. Federal Housing Finance Agency. In the post, Bill Pulte alleged that Cook had designated a condo in Atlanta as her primary residence after taking a loan on her Michigan home, which she also declared as her primary residence. Loans for a primary residence can carry easier terms than for second homes or investment properties. President Trump wrote on Truth Social, Cook must resign now. Pulte called on the Attorney General to investigate. The Justice Department said it was taking the matter very seriously. Hurricane Erin continues to track north along the East Coast while the center remains offshore. It's already causing dangerous conditions along the coastline. Officials are preparing emergency response teams and urging residents to stay aware. NTD's Christina Corona has the details.
Erin has now strengthened into a Category 2 hurricane with winds of 110 miles per hour, tracking north and running almost parallel to the East Coast. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein gave an update Wednesday.
The storm remains dangerous and is already impacting lots of people here in North Carolina. Folks on the coast need to take care. Based on the current forecast, we are anticipating coastal flooding from massive waves, tropical storm force winds, and tidal and storm surge for much of the state shoreline, especially the Outer Banks, from this evening through Thursday.
He says life-threatening rip currents will last most of the week and no one should be in the ocean. Local emergencies have been declared in Currituck, Dare, and Hyde counties, with mandatory evacuations for Ocracoke and Hatteras.
If you've been asked to evacuate, please do so now, before conditions deteriorate and roads become impassable. Do not drive around barricades and do not drive through flooded waters.
Governor Stein has issued a statewide emergency order activating state and local response teams.
We have already pre-positioned 3 swiftwater rescue teams and 200 National Guard troops to various locations on the coast, along with boats, high-clearance vehicles, and aircraft.
Hurricane Erin is roughly 335 miles off the Carolinas. A monitoring buoy about 200 miles northwest of Erin Center reported waves near 30 feet. Officials say the storm is forecast to remain offshore but may fluctuate in strength over the next day or so. The National Hurricane Center says swells from Erin will also impact Bermuda, producing rough surf and dangerous rip currents through the end of the week. Officials warn those conditions could also spread north toward Atlantic Canada as the storm tracks offshore this weekend. Christina Corona, NTD News.
President Trump saying the next step in the peace process will be a one-on-one meeting between President Putin and President Zelenskyy, with a trilateral meeting, including him if necessary. NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu has more.
Now I thought it would be better if they met without me.
President Trump saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy are in the process of setting up a meeting without him.
Just to see, I want to see what goes on. You know, they had a hard relationship, very bad relationship. And now we'll see how they do. And if necessary, and it probably would be, but if necessary, I'll go and I'll probably be able to get it closed.
And the White House confirming that a trilateral meeting, if necessary, will follow.
President Trump spoke with President Putin by phone, and he agreed to begin the next phase of the peace process, a meeting between President Putin and President Zelenskyy, which would be followed, if necessary, by a trilateral meeting between President Putin, President Zelenskyy, and President Trump.
This is as military chiefs from NATO's 32 member countries are meeting today to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who is in the meeting with President Trump and Putin in Alaska on Friday, is saying that Moscow must be a part of any talks on Ukraine's security.
I'm confident that in the West, and above all in the US, they understand perfectly well that seriously discussing security issues without the Russian Federation is a utopia and a path to nowhere.
Lavrov also confirms that Putin proposed continuing negotiations after his Monday phone call with President Trump. Meanwhile, the president today is participating in a swearing-in ceremony for the U.S. ambassador to the European Union, less than 48 hours after 7 European leaders joined Presidents Trump and Zelenskyy at the White House.
I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years.
The White House recapping the historic Alaska summit and Monday meetings, saying that President Trump is the only person who can bring these world leaders together.
President Trump is the only person in the world who can stop this conflict.
And President Trump saying he's invested in a peaceful outcome for this conflict, not because of the loss of American life, but...
If I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's I want to try and get to heaven if possible.
I think the president wants to get to heaven, as I hope we all do in this room as well.
The White House says details on locations for the next phase of peace talks will be shared as soon as possible. Reporting from the White House, Mariotsu, NTD News.
As the U.S. works toward peace in Europe, fighting in Ukraine continues. A Russian drone also reportedly exploded in neighboring Poland, which is a member of NATO. NTD's international correspondent Erin has the latest.
At least 14 people are reported injured in an overnight Russian attack on Ukraine's Sumy region. This includes a family with 3 children, aged 5 months, 4 years and 6 years old. That's according to Ukrainian officials, who say Russia launched 15 drones in the attack on the Sumy region in the early hours of Wednesday. Meanwhile, in Ukraine's Odessa region, firefighters were dealing with the aftermath of another reported Russian drone strike. Ukrainian officials called it a massive drone strike, saying it injured 1 person and caused a large fire. Over 50 emergency workers battled the flames. And in neighboring Poland on Wednesday, a military drone fell and exploded in a cornfield in the NATO member country. Polish officials say it may have been a Russian version of an Iranian drone.
Once again, we are dealing with a provocation by the Russian Federation, with a Russian drone. We are dealing with it in a crucial moment, when discussions about peace are underway.
Residents in the area where the drone made impact recount the moment of the explosion.
You're sitting there, doing something on your computer, your wife's practically asleep, and then boom, the entire house shakes.
An attack on Poland would mean an attack on NATO, which could have serious consequences. Poland also directly borders Germany, which has the highest GDP and is one of the most influential countries in Europe. Poland's defense minister says Russia's goal is to provoke Western allies.
At a time when President Trump is doing everything to bring about this peace, and Ukraine is open to concluding this peace, the provocative strategy and hybrid war continue.
So far, Russia hasn't commented on whether Poland was the intended target. Erin, NTD News.
In the Middle East, Israeli forces have officially started the first phase of their plan to take over Gaza City. Meanwhile, the Israeli government gives the final approval to build a new settlement east of Jerusalem. NTD's Jason Perry has the update.
Israel released footage on Wednesday of terrorists fleeing as an Israeli tank approached them in the Gaza Strip. Many of them attempted to take cover in this tunnel entrance, but Israel struck the area before one of the terrorists was able to make it inside. Israel also released an infographic showing where they established security zones along the Gaza Strip border. And after Operation Gideon's Chariots, they increased that security zone, and Israel now controls about 75% of the Gaza Strip. A spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces said that Operation Gideon's Chariots enabled them to increase operations in Gaza's largest city.
We will deepen the damage to Hamas in Gaza City, a stronghold of governmental and military terror for the terrorist organization. We are not waiting. We have begun the preliminary actions, and already now, IDF troops are holding the outskirts of Gaza City.
On Wednesday, Israel said they were calling up 60,000 reservists to report for duty, and that they were extending current orders for 20,000 reservists who were already deployed. Meanwhile, the Israeli government gave the final approval for plans to begin construction of a new settlement east of Jerusalem. Thousands of homes are expected to be built in an area that would nearly divide the West Bank into two parts. An Israeli official said the new settlement would, quote, bury the idea of a Palestinian state. A representative of the Bedouin community in the West Bank said they received demolition orders for buildings in the area about a week ago. And he called on the international community to prevent Israel from establishing the new settlement in the West Bank. And in another development, the U.S. Department of State issued further sanctions against 2 judges and 2 deputy prosecutors belonging to the International Criminal Court, which is supported by the United Nations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said, quote, the court is a national security threat that has been an instrument for lawfare against the United States and for our close ally, Israel. The decision comes after the court issued arrest warrants for Israeli officials over the war in the Gaza Strip. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a post on X, praised the U.S. decision and accused the court of conducting a smear campaign against Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. On the other hand, the United Nations said the sanctions, quote, undermine the foundation of international justice. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Coming up, DNI Tulsi Gabbard announcing today she's cutting the Office of the Director of National Intelligence by over 40%. That's after she revoked the security clearances of 37 current and former intelligence officials. Jack Bradley reports. Nebraska has announced plans to open a new detention center for illegal immigrants, and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says the southern border wall will be painted black to deter illegal crossings. Texas lawmakers kick off a heated debate today over a new congressional map that would create 5 new potential Republican seats. It's expected to pass the chamber later today after Texas Democrats delayed a vote for 15 days by leaving the state in protest. David Lamb has the latest. And a new law in Texas requiring the 10 commandments in schools faces a legal obstacle. What the latest court ruling says after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard announces today that she's cutting her department by more than 40% to, quote, root out deep state actors. She says the move will make the department more efficient and save taxpayers north of $700 million per year. The news comes just after she revoked security clearances for 37 intelligence officials, accusing them of politically weaponizing intelligence. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more.
Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard strips security clearances from 37 current and former intelligence officials. She also terminated any government employment or contracts for them. Gabbard said that she's doing this at the direction of President Trump, and she didn't disclose any specific acts that led to the losses of clearance for each person, but said that more generally, they were part of a political weaponization of the intelligence community, leaking classified information and bypassing normal procedures, particularly in creating a false intelligence report that accused Trump of colluding with Russia in the 2016 election.
They were not happy with the outcome of that election, and so they created this politicized, weaponized piece of fake intelligence. They aided and abetted in this action, this seditious conspiracy that undermined our democracy, undermined our republic. These are bad actors that have to be rooted out.
In announcing the move on X, she said that a security clearance is a privilege, not a right. Those who betray their oath to the Constitution and put their own interests before the interests of the American people have broken the sacred trust they promised to uphold. Those who lost their security clearances can no longer access classified facilities and information. Back in July, Gabbard said that the intelligence community did assess that in the months leading up to the November 2016 election, Russia was trying to interfere in the U.S. presidential election by sowing discord and chaos, but repeatedly stating that Russia didn't appear to have a preference for either candidate and viewed both equally bad for Russia's interest. She then said that in December 2016, then President Obama called for another intelligence assessment to contradict it and claim that Russia did interfere in Trump's favor.
There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false.
But Gabbard said that they used substandard intelligence, bypassing normal procedures, and used the Steele dossier as a source for the newer assessment. The Steele dossier is now widely considered to have been discredited. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Nebraska will soon be home to a new federal immigration detention center dubbed the Cornhusker Clink. It's part of the Trump administration's broader plan to expand deportation infrastructure nationwide. Here are the details.
Nebraska. Governor Jim Pillen announced Tuesday that Nebraska is partnering with the Department of Homeland Security to convert a minimum security work camp into a facility that will hold immigrants awaiting deportation. The facility, nicknamed the Cornhusker Clink, will be located in McCook, a rural town of about 7,000 people. Officials say it will house people awaiting deportation across the Midwest. Governor Pillen says the project is about keeping Nebraskans and Americans across the country safe. The governor also announced that about 20 members of the Nebraska National Guard will provide logistical and administrative support. The State Patrol will also sign an agreement with ICE to help make arrests. Some Nebraska lawmakers and residents are raising alarms. State Senator Megan Hunt criticized a lack of transparency about plans for the new center. She says Nebraska's governor has so far not provided her with emails and records she requested. The McCook site is not the first of its kind. It follows recently opened facilities in Florida and Indiana as the administration adds capacity to handle record immigration arrests. But those centers are facing lawsuits and criticism. In Florida, detainees at the so-called Alligator Alcatraz facility say they've endured poor conditions and limited access to attorneys. A federal judge in Miami Tuesday dismissed part of a lawsuit claiming detainees were denied access to immigration courts. But the judge allowed other claims, like limits on meetings with attorneys, to continue. Meanwhile, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem spoke Tuesday in New Mexico about a broader national effort to combat illegal immigration, one that includes painting the entire southern border wall black.
That is specifically at the request of the president, who understands that in the hot temperatures down here, when something is painted black, it gets even warmer, and it will make it even harder for people to climb.
Noem says construction is moving quickly, with about half a mile of new wall going up each day.
President Trump's goals for the Smithsonian museums are stirring debate. The president is criticizing exhibits, saying they focus too heavily on America's flaws and not enough on its achievements. We'll break down the controversy with our panelists, Chip Franklin and Kate Zachariah, tonight on Capitol Report with Steve Lance at 7 p.m. Eastern. A temporary block on a new law in Texas, which would require public schools to display the 10 Commandments. A federal district court has halted the state law, which was set to take effect next month. It would have required public schools to have the 10 Commandments displayed in every classroom. The judge issued the preliminary injunction ruling that the law likely violates the First Amendment. Texas's Attorney General defended the law and has vowed to appeal the court's decision. Texas state lawmakers kicked off a heated debate today over a new congressional map that would create 5 new potential Republican seats ahead of next year's midterm election. That's after Texas Democrats delayed a vote for 15 days by leaving the state in protest, depriving the House of enough members to do business. The map is expected to pass the chamber later today as part of a growing national redistricting battle. NTD's David Lamb reports.
The Texas House of Representatives held a legislative session as Democratic lawmakers returned to the state capitol Monday. The Democrats had left Texas in a 2-week walkout to prevent action on a redistricting bill that would favor Republicans ahead of the 2026 election. Bill author Todd Hunter said the new map would give Republicans opportunities to win over voters in new districts.
In the 2021 plan, there were 7 Hispanic citizen voting age districts, and under this plan, there are 8. There are no black CVAP districts under the 2021 plan. In the proposed plan, there are 2 majority black CVAP districts.
The Texas Senate passed the bill on August 13th. Were the state House to pass the bill, it would go to Governor Greg Abbott for his signature. Those in opposition, including protesters, are calling for an amendment that would allow an independent commission to draw the lines.
Where I come from in Texas, we're proud of our independent-mindedness and believe in our right to self-determination, which is why I know there is no reason why Texans should settle for a redistricting process that does not let us make up our own mind.
For over two centuries, the accepted norm of American democracy has been redrawing maps once a decade so that the peoples represented are based on accurate official population data. This amendment simply codifies that tradition. Redistricting should only occur within 2 years of a census when population numbers are fresh and reliable.
Democrats returned to the state after 2 conditions were met: the end of the first special session and California's introduction of a redrawn congressional map that would counteract Texas's redistricting by seeking to add 5 Democratic seats in California. David Lamb, NTD News.
Coming up, China seeks to influence India as the U.S. negotiates peace between Russia and Ukraine. Luis Martinez has more on the visit by Chinese officials to New Delhi. And Russia expects to continue supplying oil to India despite warnings from the U.S. It's also seeking trilateral talks with both India and China. China analyst and national security advisor Casey Fleming joins us to take a closer look at Beijing's role in the Russia-Ukraine conflict and how the U.S. and allies should approach the communist nation during peace negotiations when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The Chinese Communist Party met with Indian officials this week in New Delhi as the U.S. negotiates a potential peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has more on the story.
Chinese Communist Party diplomats traveled to New Delhi this week seeking closer ties with India. The relations between the 2 bordering nations has been tense since clashes at the border broke out in December of 2022 in between the Indian military and Chinese forces.
I had a wonderful meeting in the last round in Beijing, and I'm very happy that since then, in the last 9 months, there has been an upward trend. Borders have been quiet. There have been peace and tranquility. Our bilateral engagements have been more substantial.
And earlier this year, over 24 Indians died after missile strikes from Pakistan. Pakistan receives over 80% of its armament from China. The rapprochement in between China and India is not the first alliance the Chinese Communist Party has set out with traditional adversaries in recent years.
Because they're basically natural enemies. Russia has tremendous amounts of land. China has tremendous amounts of people. And China needs Russia land. But because of pure stupidity, they were driven together. And you know what? That's what it is. I don't know that it's going to stay that way because it really is. There's a natural friction there.
The Russian government has also been courting New Delhi. Since the war in Ukraine broke out, India has become the 2nd largest buyer of Russian oil.
Russia is the largest producer of oil. India is the largest consumer. Any kind of unilateral actions lead to disruptions. If hypothetically India refuses from the Russian oil, it will not lead to the equal cooperation and mutually beneficial cooperation with the West in general.
It's important to know that despite China's and Russia's attempt to court New Delhi, the Indian government remains a member of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, an alliance in between Japan, the U.S., Australia, and India, whose main objective is to counter Beijing's influence in the Indo-Pacific. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And joining us now to discuss these latest developments is National Security Advisor and China analyst Casey Fleming. He's the CEO of Black Ops Partners. Casey, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Now, all eyes are on how the Russia-Ukraine conflict is going to end. Russia has just indicated it wants a trilateral with India and China. What could this mean in terms of Putin ending or continuing the war in Ukraine?
I think what we're looking at, and my team thinks that what we're looking at is an extended peace negotiation. We've got two sides. We've got the United States and Ukraine who want an immediate end to the war. And you've got the other side, which is China, Russia, and other allies of China and Russia who want to keep it extended. And they play the long game. So we want to play the short game to a quick ceasefire and a quick peace agreement. But the other negotiators, the adversaries, want to keep it much longer. The CCP is the wild card in this thing. The CCP plays the long game. They want to keep Russia engaged in Ukraine, therefore the U.S. engaged in Ukraine to keep us distracted, along with the Middle East and potentially another war that pops up, either Taiwan or North Korea. So the game for the CCP is to keep the United States very distracted so they can continue their extreme aggression throughout the rest of the world.
Now, on that note, both China and India have been buying Russian oil, which the U.S. says has been helping to fund the conflict, although India has been buying less since President Trump slashed additional tariffs on Indian exports to the U.S. over its Russian oil and gas imports. But reports note that China is involved with more than just economic support. Some note the No Limits partnership that was struck right before the invasion. What has been China's role here?
China's role has been very supportive of Russia. You remember that they created a very strong alliance and agreement until the end, before Russia ever went into Ukraine. So there's a strategic partnership there, at least for now, where they are aligned against the United States and to remove the United States as a global superpower and for the CCP's eventual rule of the rest of the world. So it's a partnership that we cannot ignore. The CCP is the wild card in this situation. They are the grand puppet master with Russia, Iran, Pakistan, North Korea underneath that, and to a little bit of an extent, India as well. So China is the wild card. They want to keep this war going as long as they possibly can. And if there is a temporary ceasefire or a quote, temporary peace agreement, it will be temporary.
And speaking of alliances, Casey, what about the North Korean troops fighting alongside the Russians? How should we read that?
The strong alliance, like I mentioned, China is the grand puppeteer, the grand master puppeteer, with Russia, Iran, Pakistan, and North Korea underneath that piece of it. And just to add a little bit of confusion and a little bit more complexity, underneath Iran, you have the terrorist organizations. So this is all a master plan by the Chinese Communist Party. I think we as a government, we as a country in the free world underestimate China. We all have a long history of underestimating the Chinese Communist Party, and it's high time that we understand just how critical their role is in the future developments of the world.
Expand on that for us a little bit. What is China's goal in terms of the Russia-Ukraine war here? Is it in the Chinese regime's interest for it to continue?
Absolutely. They are supplying Russia with finance, buying Russian oil and military armaments, including drones. So they're fully engaged. Again, they want this war to continue indefinitely. So it keeps us distracted, keeps us spread very thin from supporting, 2-3 wars around the world. So CCP has ultimate designs. I think when you have to look at it, they want to rule the world completely in their 100-year plan, which ends in the year 2049. As Xi Jinping and the CCP have been overachievers, you might want to forecast that as being year 2035, which is 10 short years away. And here's a quote from me: "The world will be won or lost within the next 10 years. That's from our analysis of what's been going on. And we've been in this game quite a long time.
And given all that's at stake here, how should the U.S. alongside Western allies address China in terms of negotiations around ending the war in Ukraine?
I would keep the tariffs as a strong tool against China. The American people, the Canadians, the Brits, everybody on the allied side need to stop buying Chinese products. So the American government's not going to tell you to do it. But, those of us who are at the tip of the spear in counterintelligence, we need to tell our brothers and sisters in the free world to stop buying Chinese gear. And that starts Chinese products. And that starts with anything electronic that plugs into the wall. You should stop buying anything that plugs into the wall from China. And we need to do that from a street level, not a government level. The government level certainly works the tariffs piece of it from a political standpoint. But honestly, this is what's called unrestricted war. And every American, every Brit, Canadian, Aussie, Frenchman, German are on the front lines of this war. And the CCP's plan is never to go to conventional war with any of us. It's just to win the war without fighting or without firing a shot.
And on that government level, what would you like to see from this administration when it comes to calling out China's role in the Russia-Ukraine conflict? New sanctions?
New sanctions for sure to hit them where it counts, not just Russia economically, but also China economically. The whole oil thing, if they are found to be buying oil and shipping oil from Russia through proxy nations or proxy tankers, then direct sanctions need to come across with that, not just for China, but also for India as well, and any other proxies that they decide to use under other foreign flags on those tankers. The other thing is I wish and I demand our government stop any type of foreign influence coming from anywhere, namely China, namely Russia, and anybody else on that list I mentioned earlier, to stop any type of foreign influence. That means lobbying, that means purchasing land under Chinese names, Russian names, or by proxies. But basically any financial support for lobbying needs to be banned and needs to be counted as treason. And those are two very important things for us to get our country back in line and working in the right order.
And when it comes to learning about this, you actually have some exciting news. You have a new book coming out, The Red Tsunami, The Silent Storm Killing Your Freedom. I see it right there behind you. Give us a sneak peek of what to expect and when it's coming out.
Well, everybody's felt it. And when I go out on speaking engagements, everybody asks, where's your book? Where's your book? And it's been going on for years. And I waited for people to write the book. Nobody's written the book. Nobody's written it to every man and woman on the street. And those are the people on the front lines of this unrestricted war. So I connect the dots. I show you what's going on. I connect the dots. Everybody says, will somebody please tell me the truth and what is going on? So we connect the dots for you. It'll be very clear what's going on, who's doing it, where it's coming from, and what you need to do to protect yourself and to protect our nation and the rest of the free world. That's expected to come out in pre-orders are going to be in Q4, and the book will be out for purchase and delivery in late January.
All right, we'll keep an eye out for that. Casey Fleming, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up in baseball, Shohei Ohtani gets the start on the mound tonight for LA. Will he finally get a win? Dave Martin joins us to discuss when we return. Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on right now, but let's start in boxing as the sports governing body announced today they'll require sex testing for all boxers in the women's division as the World Championships start next month. How will they do this testing?
Yeah, this is going to be chromosome-based testing. Now, the test will simply identify the presence of the Y chromosome as the indicator. I should say the presence or the absence, of course, Y being the indicator that they are male. Now, many sports have previously used hormone-based testing, but they found that some women just have naturally high testosterone levels. So this obviously seems like a much better option. Now, if you remember in last summer's Olympics, there was quite the scandal going on as a pair of female boxers won gold medals while under some public suspicion that they were actually transgender boxers. I'm sure the boxing world would rather not have the same issue repeated at the World Championships next month. So hopefully, Tiff, this testing takes care of it. I mean, it seems pretty simple to me. You either find a Y chromosome or not, but I'm not a scientist, though, so I really couldn't say how easy it is.
I guess we shall see how successful this is. Shifting gears to college football, though, the playoff committee announced today that it'll put more emphasis on strength of schedule when determining the playoff field. What sparked this change?
Well, you know, the playoff committee didn't exactly say, but there was a lot of displeasure voiced last year when an 11-2 SMU team made the playoffs over a 9-3 Alabama team last season, or even South Carolina or Ole Miss. All three of those teams 9-3. All three from the SEC. Now, you could certainly make a case that Alabama, or really any SEC team, probably had a tougher conference schedule than SMU or really any ACC team there. Of course, there's a lot of money involved in these playoffs. You could also say, though, a team like SMU really can't control who is in front of them, who they're playing. They really can't control how good their conference actually is. I think there would have been plenty of complaining, though, from ACC side had the SMU been left out of the playoffs there. I mean, it was just 2 years ago that a 13-0 Florida State team, also from the ACC, missed the playoffs as the committee cited their star quarterback's injury as being the main reason. In any case, this year's final playoff rankings will be announced on December 7. You know, Tiff, I don't think there's actually ever been a season where there wasn't some griping over who didn't or who did make the playoffs. I mean, usually I'm the one who's doing the griping, of course, as you get to sit front row to hear that. But we'll actually see how this turns out. I have a feeling, though, I mean, just like in college basketball, there's always controversy over who makes it and who doesn't. Even in college basketball has a billion teams now in the tournament. Football has 12, so it's a little more selective.
All right, well, we'll see how that turns out come
Wait
December.
for my gripes in December, all right? I know you're looking forward to those.
When winter is coming, too. Looking at baseball news, though, the New York Yankees hit 9 home runs last night. This is the second time this season they've done that. Yeah, it's a major league record. Now, back on March 29, that was just the second game of the season, New York Yankees hit 9 runs back then. Now, if you remember, at that time, those torpedo bats were all the rage, as everyone kind of thought these newly shaped bats, you know, shaped more like a bowling pin, you can see them right there, really led to more home runs. Not anymore, though. Now, to be fair, the Yankees still lead the majors in home runs. They're no longer really on record pace or even close to it. They've got 204 right now through 125 games. That puts them on pace for 264. The record is 307. And even though they do lead the majors this season, that 204 is still the best in the majors. Aaron Judge, who's their leader, is the main reason why, and he does not use the torpedo bat. In any case, Yankees play at the at the Rays tonight in Tampa Bay, and of course they play at the Steinbrenner Field, which is the Yankees' actual spring training complex. Maybe they just like that home feeling away from home, because of course Tampa Bay Stadium was ravaged by the hurricane last fall. Who knows? Whatever reason, they hit a lot more home runs last night. We'll see if they hit some more time. All right, well, speaking of baseball, elsewhere in the season, we have 10 games on tonight. What matchups are standing out to you? Well, Dodgers versus the Rockies. Shohei Ohtani is going to be starting pitcher tonight as well as hitting tonight. Now, this will be his 10th start. He has yet to get a win this year. Of course, he has not actually gone 5 innings in any of those starts. You have to go 5 innings to actually be eligible for a win. But he's pitching against the league's worst team, the Colorado Rockies. It's certainly possible he goes 5 innings tonight. Now, his last 2 starts, he's made 4 innings. He's looked very good there. That game starts at 8:40 Eastern time tonight. Now, elsewhere tonight, we've got the Cubs versus Brewers. These are the top 2 teams in the National League Central. Cubs coming in 7 games behind the Brewers, although they swept the doubleheader yesterday. Brewers have been really on fire. I mean, they just had that 14-game winning streak snapped on Sunday. It's still conceivable that the Cubs, though,
could actually come back and win the division, down 7 at this point. But if they lose tonight, down 8 with like 40-some games up, it's going to be very difficult. At least 6 seems somewhat possible, Tiff. So we'll actually see. Anyway, that game, 8:05 Eastern time tonight. So you have time to get home and watch it, right?
And so do you. Well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiff.
And that's all for today's news. For on-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.